So I had been a sole parent since my kids were 1 and 3. And that means no time from their father, no financial, like nothing. I got half the business debt. I'm a single parent of 2 kids. I'm like, what? What am I going to do? What does this look like?
Lean on closer. This is your time. Hit record on your crooked life. What's your story? Hey, say the words out loud. Mike and Scott gonna crack that crowd. What's your story? Hey, turn it up, let's go. Every voice, every scar, every road. What's your story? Mike and Scott. Let's talk.
Welcome back to another episode. What's your story? Mike Lindstrom, my man, Scott Leese, another episode. I'm excited about this one. This is a friend I've known for 15 plus years who I haven't physically seen. And that's the downfall of social media. As you know, you see them on LinkedIn and Facebook and you text, but to actually give somebody a hug and actually engage a real conversation, which is what we're going to do here today. So I'm excited to have that. So, it was back in 2017.
Oh, so almost 10 years.
Yeah, almost 10 years at
Wow.
least. So she said decade, so she's correct. So without further ado, I would call it a keynote speaker other than friend, keynote speaker, influencer, trainer, personality in so many different ways. Jodi Low, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here. It's so good to see you again.
It has been
like a million years.
I know, but we act like it's been like since yesterday.
I know, because it's big hugs and we're all back
to normal. So we always start off with the question, what's your story? You give us your abbreviated version, however you do, and then we start going down the rabbit holes.
My abbreviated version, my story. I am insanely passionate about people, and I have built my life around that. I grew up here in Arizona since I was 5, so more or less a native, pseudo-native.
Yeah.
Went to Arizona State, loved that, and quickly realized that I am not a good employee. I just did not like working for someone, just very entrepreneurial, always sort of have been. And I thought, I got to start something, I got to build something. And so I was doing that with my husband of the time, at that time. And then that kind of went in a really sideways direction overnight. And with that is really what propelled me into starting my company, You and Improved. So that was almost 18 years ago.
What year was that?
That was 2008.
Well, you had another name of a brand back then, too, that we all knew because the Corridors was being built in Scottsdale. And her logo was on a very prominent spot in town, so you would see it. And then it morphed into what you have currently now.
You and Improved,
And you're solo.
I am. I've been solo for, almost 18 years now.
So what of those titles, influencer, keynote speaker, trainer, other than mom and the obvious, what one do you kind of lean all in on when it comes to your brand?
I would say trainer, corporate trainer, leadership trainer. That's probably a speaker. I don't know. They're all right.
I
mean, it's so hard because it's almost like these pieces of myself that all meld together. So it's almost saying what's more important, your right arm, your left leg. It's like, I need them all. Yeah, I'm sort of a hybrid of all of them.
So take us back. What was the jump off point where you said, I need to go into the training world? This is what it's going to be. You had your aha moments is what I call it. What was that for you?
The early aha was in college. Always found myself gravitating toward any public speaking classes, toward communication was my major. I thought I wanted to teach. I actually was going to go into the College of Teaching, got accepted into all of that. And then I was like, ooh, that's a lot of kids, a lot of the time. I knew I wanted to be a mom one day, but that just didn't feel right. And so oddly enough, here I am all these years later, I'm teaching communication and speaking and all of those things. So it was a hybrid that I didn't see then that ended up coming to fruition. But I just always knew that it was something to do with helping elevate people, helping people live bigger, dream bigger. I was just that crazy person that was always going to listen to speakers and go to classes, anything that would challenge me and push me. I was like, yes, sign me up. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And that was really the launching point, just wanting to create
something. Big influences there? Professor at college, motivational speaker, a book?
Yeah, huge professor at ASU was a big influence, Dr. Fred Corey, who has since retired, although he did come to my book launch, which was
so cool.
And my senior year high school English teacher, which was so much fun because both of them were really, really key influential people in my writing and speaking and all of that. So that was really special.
You said you realized early that I can't remember how you phrased it, but you weren't going to be a good employee. You didn't want to work for somebody else. How did that manifest itself? What did you experience or do, or what happened where you were like, yeah, this is not going to work?
Great question, because there's a very specific moment. So I was working in local radio sales and I loved it. I was meeting people. I was very young, just out of college. So it was like my first
sales job, first out of
first real sales job, but I was like, oh, this is perfect because I love people. And what I loved about it, I loved working with small local businesses, hearing their story and helping them grow. I thought that was just so cool. And then national accounts and seeing the difference with that. I was like, oh, okay, helping these brands grow. I really loved it. The thing that I didn't love was if I'm seeing clients out in the East Valley, why do I need to drive back to the station at 5 o'clock to just say, okay, bye, I'm going.
Clock out.
I didn't get it. There was no logic to that. And I was a big producer. I enjoyed it. I mean, I was doing everything I needed to do. I'm like, this just is ridiculous. So, and just the rules and the meetings and all of the things that just seemed silly to me. And I'm like, well, aren't we grown adults? Can't we just go do what we need to do? I'm losing time driving back and forth. So this didn't make sense to me. I was like, I need to do my own thing.
So did you literally have this thing in the wake, or did you just quit cold turkey and say?
I didn't. No, I didn't. It was really just a metamorphosis of things that happened. It's sort of a sequence of events that unfolded. I started to work in magazine sales. That was a lot more independent. I was working from home, and back then you didn't work from home, but that role allowed me to do that. And so then I started to see the more autonomy I had, the more I was like, I love this because I'm very driven. I'm very self-motivated. So I didn't need as much of that structure. Yeah. I love the people part, but I was getting that with seeing clients. And so that was fulfilling there. I just like setting my own schedule, doing my own thing. Yeah. That
So if you watch the cast, we get a lot of professional ladies come on here, and we love asking the question about, because you're a mama bear. Right?
I am.
How did you juggle that when you were on the come up? Because they were younger. Now at the age where they're not, of course, that's great. ASU. Yeah. They're kind of out of the house. But how did you juggle that as an entrepreneur and a mama bear?
I have no idea. I have no freaking idea.
That's the best, most honest answer yet.
Literally, because I get asked that question, like, how did you do it? I'm like, I freaking don't know. Yeah. I just did it because there was no other choice. So the whole long backstory is it was just me. So I had been a sole parent since my kids were 1 and 3. And that means no time from their father, no financial, like nothing. So when that imploded, it was like me and my girls, they were 1 and 3. And I was like, we have no businesses, because I had a couple of businesses with him at the time. So I got half the business debt. I'm a single parent of 2 kids. I'm like, what am I going to do? What does this look like? And I just spent some time really over those next probably 4 to 6 weeks going, I want to build something that's meaningful, that's impactful, that can really shape people's lives and businesses. And what is that going to be? And so that's when I really dove into creating You and Improved. The funny part is people always like, well, you didn't get a job. I never dawned on me to get a job. Like it never dawned. That's when we talk about wired to be an entrepreneur. It never dawned on me. I'm like, well, I got to build something because I want to be 100% present on anything that I commit to with my girls. And I know I need to keep a roof over our head and a house. And how am I going to do this? So that's what I did. And God bless my dad. He was helping out a ton to just run them to school if I couldn't, or pick them up. But I would just work my tail off while they were in school or preschool.
Was that a 7 days a week thing when you were getting started? When you're working on your business every single day? People don't talk about that enough. And you're like shamed nowadays for working on Saturday and Sunday or whatever.
But around the clock. It was nap times. It was phone meetings while my kids were napping in the back seat of the car. It was whatever it took. It was crazy. But that's why when you say, how did you do it? I'm like, I really don't know. I just did it because there wasn't another option. It was just, if there was time, that's what we were doing. I was going to figure it out because they're my world. And
how do you coach others through a similar experience now? Yeah. Because when your default answer is, I don't know, I just freaking did it.
Yeah.
I would imagine that clients and people that you're coaching, and they're like, can you give me a little more?
Can you help me through that a little bit more, Jenny?
You're like, well, okay, that was the honest truth, but now I have to find something for you.
There's a lot more structure. There's a lot of things that one can do depending on the circumstance, right? So a lot of my clients now, I do a lot of corporate training. So working within companies for years, sometimes even decades, working with them to solidify, how do we create collaboration? How do we create true team alignment? How do we do that? So that looks a lot different than what I was doing even in the early days, which were a lot more individual coaching and working with more solopreneurs. Now I work with a lot of from Fortune 100 to small businesses, so it looks a lot different, but the messaging is still the same. If you are looking to be everything to everyone and not taking care of yourself in the process, it's a recipe for disaster. And that I figured out quickly. I'm like, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Like I can't give what I don't have. I've got to take care of myself. So I would still do whatever I could to make sure that I was taking care of myself mentally, physically. There was no question on exercising and just taking some breaks here and there, a massage, whatever it was. Like I had to do whatever it took to keep me
some form of self-care.
Which I think sometimes people look at that as, oh, that's a silly expense or not necessary or whatever, some superfluous thing that you don't need to do. To me, it's if you're not doing that, you can't be everything that you need to be.
Well, there's also, it juxtaposes, especially as a single mom, closed mouths don't get fed. Yeah. You got to go out there and ask and do the deal and grind and hustle. But you also have that point of, if the cup's empty, you got to start with yourself.
Absolutely.
So there's this constant toggle between the two. We were fascinated because we had Keely O'Kelly on from BBC 15, and she's similar story, 2 kids. But the only difference was for her, it's like her crazy morning makeup schedule, getting on air live.
So early.
I can't even imagine doing that stuff.
Yeah,
I could work from my home with pajamas on Sunday or do a call with kids in the back.
Yeah.
But to say I got to be on that camera live at 5 a.m. and then my buddy's got to be in bed by 10, I just can't do that.
That's a
whole different thing.
Different level.
But just even listening to her on our podcast talk about what she's very similar answer. Like, I don't know how I do it, but you figure it out. And I think that's where the mama bear thing comes in, because you're going to trust your instincts, because you're always going to put your kids ahead of yourself.
100%. I knew early on, just the way things unfolded, it's like my biggest title is to be role model of these girls. I've got to figure out how. I didn't know what we were going to do. I didn't know how we were going to do it. It's 8 weeks after my divorce. I'm filing paperwork for this little LLC called You and Improve. I had no idea really what I was doing. I was just one foot in front of the other. And I wanted them to see that too, though, that we can get through hard stuff. I'm like, at some point in their lives, they're going to be faced with challenges. They're also going to wonder, how did we get here? And how did we, and I've got to build this for them. So
when you first started, was your niche primarily female entrepreneurs? And then
in the very early days, but for You and Improved, it was really leadership. I really wanted to focus on impacting teams, impacting leaders. I feel, and what I've seen, especially now over the last 18 years, especially, there's a big gap in managing people and leading people. And there's a whole lot of managers and not as many phenomenal leaders. And my whole piece of that was, how do we create a heart-based leadership movement? I wanted to help people see that when you get out of here and lead from here, it all comes together, but that's a big journey. It's 18 inches, but it is the longest journey of your life. And when you realize, though, my gosh, when I care about my team members or my gal that answers the phone as much as I care about my biggest producer or my biggest customer, wow, if I come from here, it all falls into place. And that's the difference. And you will build a phenomenal team when you make that shift.
That's a big shift, though. We talked about this earlier in the cast about this whole mouth heart thing. How do you get people to do that? Because that is a long 18 inches.
It is.
What's your tenets to get that?
It's a process. We have a lot of different classes that dive into that. They're immersive. They're intense by design, because it isn't a sprinkle pixie dust and everybody's a heart-based leader. It's an evolution, and it's an introspection, and it's putting things into action and seeing what sticks and what works and what feels authentic to that person, because I can do something that feels completely authentic to me and how I would lead. And you might be like, that's scratchy and totally uncomfortable. Scratchy and uncomfortable is okay if it's challenging you to grow, but if it's inauthentic, that's not okay.
Yeah.
So you got to find that.
What are some of the big influences in terms of training? Like, everyone knows I'm a Tony Robbins guy. That was my first job out of law school. I worked for Tony for 3 years, speaking, coaching, built this coaching company in 2000, and then broke off. And that's how I got into coaching. After I helped him build his company, I started my own.
Love that.
What was some of the influences there? Because it's one thing to go get an LLC and say, hey, let's go do this. We're going to teach this to this.
Yeah.
But now you need mentors or people that are going to coach you or train. It could be a lot of people gave me grief about it. I still stand by it. Landmark Forum. I did Landmark years and years ago. I was 2017. I still say it's one of the best programs. If you're willing to put up with 3 days of listening to somebody listen to your story and come at you and no journal and you leave at midnight. My wife and I did it when we got engaged. I still love that course. It's morphed a little bit. It's clearly not what Est was way back when he built that program in the 70s and 80s. Those were some of my influences. So what would you say you hang your hat on when it comes to some of your...
It was a lot of different speakers, a lot of different books, a lot of different programs. One of the key influences, though, I had the opportunity to hear Les Brown speak.
Oh, fantastic.
And I heard it was a very unusual circumstance. I actually included the story in my book because it was that pivotal of a moment. He was speaking here locally, and it was like a PBS thing, a fundraising thing. I'd heard his voice on TV. I was like, what is going on? And it said he was coming here locally. And he fills the Georgia Dome, this. I was like, oh my gosh, he's coming here. I've got to go. And this is right when my divorce happened, right then. And I'm just figuring things out. And he ended up coming to KT's studios, and there was about 40 of us.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, he's right there. This is crazy. And at the break, he came up to me and he put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, so what's your story?
Love it.
And I'm like what's going on? He's like, what do you do? And we had this dialogue. He's like, give me your card. Let's talk. I'm like, oh my gosh. It was a big aha, because it was the first time that someone who didn't, his words to me were, you have something that I can't teach, and I want to speak with you. I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm like, okay, is this like a sales thing? I'm like, no, this is Les Brown. He certainly doesn't need me. Like, what is this?
Yes.
And so as that unfolded, it was like, wow, someone saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that was the first where the penny dropped. Like, I got this. I can do this,
And I've always found that people I know Les is a gift in so many ways. People that they just have an ability to kind of see you and go, okay, I don't know what's here, but something's going. They say, and what was the movie Jerry Maguire told Quan?
Yeah.
Right? Quan.
That's one I have not heard
the thing you can't describe.
Wow.
We're throughout the whole movie, the Quan.
Yeah, so less on my Quan.
Yeah.
And I was like, there she is. This is the person. We need her.
What was the Quan for you when you started having your aha
For
moments?
me, I believe my gift is I see in people what they don't see in themselves. So when he did that for me, and then I started to see, wow, like I can just feel when someone's off. I can feel like there's just that, like, okay, what's the real story? So digging deep and then really getting into the mindset piece.
Yeah.
Because going back to, how did you do it or how did you get through it? So much of it was this. Had I not learned what I knew and what I learned along the way, I wouldn't have gotten through my divorce. I wouldn't have built the company to what it is today. I wouldn't have been able to do all of that had I not had all of that training and knowledge prior. And that was, again, the classes, the books, the speakers, anything I could get my hands on.
How did you find ways to scale yourself? You are the product.
Always growing
you could
every
say.
single year. What classes
Right.
can I take? What course? And some were great. You were talking about different ones that you've been through. People always say, well, why should I go to you and approve or not? I don't know. Why should you? You should go to everything. Anything that speaks to you. You might love it. You might hate it. I've gone to things that I thought were horrible. I've got to things that I thought were amazing. But I learned either way, ways of learning, ways of communicating, ways of training that I didn't love. And then I picked up on things that I was like, that was pivotal. That was instrumental. That was life-changing. It was the culmination of all of it. But had I not experienced all of it, I wouldn't know necessarily the difference or the things that worked.
Yeah.
You feel like integrating AI into your work and your life is one of those kind of moments?
Me, no.
No.
Well, I say that if it's a thought starter or, hey, what's another way to phrase something? I think it could be beneficial for those kinds of things.
Yeah.
For me and my work, my whole thing is this. Like, I love the people to people. Like during COVID, yes, I did whatever I could online, but that's just not my happy place.
You must be dealing with companies and executives now, though, that are having communication leadership issues and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they're trying to incorporate AI into that. I was just curious if AI is making that worse.
Yeah.
Their
To me,
communication
AI is
landscape
going
or
to be a
making it
huge
better?
gift for me and my company because it's similar to COVID. The pendulum swung so far. Everyone's going to work from home. Everything's going to be remote. Everything's on Zoom. We can train. We can do everything this way. And then we realized, oh gosh, we need each other. We need people. We need community. We need connection. We need collaboration. We got to get people back in the office more. We've got, people missed it.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of hybrid. Great. But people miss the connectivity piece. The same element is part of AI. AI is an amazing tool. It's going to do revolutionary things. It already is. And there's going to be that awakening of we still have to communicate and have human experiences. We still have to use our minds and think critically and strategically. And it's a great tool. It's amazing.
I agree.
That's the part I see.
Yeah, we always talk about this in our world too, because if Mike's not doing the coaching, no one else is doing the coaching.
Yep.
So I don't leverage just some junior coach like some models do.
Yep.
That's just
Yep.
not my thing.
Yep.
So that's why I take on a limited number of clients and charge more money.
Yep.
So that's what we all do. But then you start thinking about how AI is. Do I have to create online courses? Should I create more communities? It just definitely throws a wrench in our way of thinking of. We like to touch. We like to be mano a mano. We want to do the live seminar. We don't want to be on Zoom.
Yep.
So it's not easy.
Not easy at all. And my mind always goes to, I could do this and I have more ideas and more things I want to do than I could ever accomplish in lifetimes, plural.
Yeah.
So I always have to rein it in. Okay, what do people really need and want? What would be most impactful? What would be most meaningful? And I love to be that in person. And,
Yeah.
It feels like it's raised the bar and expectation for all of us in terms of what we're supposed to have produced.
Yeah.
So you're saying, should I have this course? Should I do this? Should I do that? And it leaves me sometimes with a feeling of like, well, fuck, I guess I'm not doing enough.
Right.
Because I could and should be doing all these other things, all these other ideas that I have. Shouldn't AI be allowing me to execute on everything?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We get people coming at us. Well, we want to do this. We want to do this.
Yeah.
So I had forwarded something over to him. The guy alleged to be like, I can turn your podcast into this virtual course or whatever. And the simple response, not interested in doing any of that stuff. Right. And I didn't either. I was just showing him what comes at us to keep our minds thinking about what's possible. Because right now we may not be wanting to go down that path of trying to create a virtual thing relative to the podcast. But in 3 months, we might be thinking, man, we really missed the boat on that.
Yeah.
We should be capitalizing
That's
on
the thing. I think keeping your eyes and ears open and not closing any doors and being very true and authentic to who you are and your best way of delivery or connection. And for many, there's online programs that are perfect. And a lot of people love to learn that way. There's others that's just not their thing or they prefer this. So
Yeah. Do you have virtual courses?
no, not really. Everything I do is pretty much live. I do it virtually, but it's still live.
So one to many.
nothing
You'd be in this studio piping out to 50 people, 100 people.
Yeah.
And that's to the public audience or that's to a private group, like a private company?
Group. Private group.
Okay.
Yep. That's the smallest part of what I do. That's
Got
maybe 5%.
Okay.
And it's more for clients that I'm already working with in New York or Minnesota or Mexico. I need to reach them and I can't be in front of them, but it's always in conjunction with something I'm doing live because I just know
So
with
do
my sleep.
you ever just have the leader, like the CEO calls you cold or warm, they see you on the podcast,
Yeah.
go, hey, we want this Jodi to be my coach, but I don't want you coaching my company or my team. I just want you to work with me one-on-one. Is that an option, or do
Yep.
they say no?
No, I do that. I work with individual executives. I work with leadership teams, and then obviously organizations. It just depends on what
Right.
they need. But absolutely. So yes, I do that. And oftentimes that's a great way to really connect with them, understand their business and their culture. And
Yeah, I actually prefer it.
Yeah,
When
you love that.
I had one last week, there was a guy, so I want you to work with my sales team. And he's talking about all this great stuff, the budget and what they want to do to the team. And of course, I asked him at the end, I go, what about you? He's like, oh, well, I'm trying to make my salespeople better. I want them to get better close ratios. I'm like, well, who's going to lead them?
Yeah.
Speed of leader dictates speed of pack. So what about you? I said, my proposal is I just coach you for 6 months and that'll happen by product.
I literally, Mike, had this conversation end of last week, and I was talking to the CEO of a company, and he's like, well, I've got a couple of executives that I'd love to put through this. And I said, hey, and I said, I'd like to come to your class. The one after that, can I do that? Because I can't make this one. I said, if you're committed and they know that you're coming to the next one, yes. But if you're not coming, or if you're saying that, not showing up, no, because
Yes.
the leader pays of the fat.
Yes,
So if
yes.
you're expecting someone to do something that you haven't done or aren't committed to doing, not my client.
That's a good
Yeah.
filter, though.
Yeah. Oh, it's 100%.
It's a
It's a great
philosophy.
filter.
I don't think many people have that philosophy from the get-go.
No.
In the early days, I think, when you're just
In the
starting
beginning, you're
out,
like,
sure.
I need every dollar or whatever.
The answer is
right?
yes. I will coach.
whatever
Yes.
it-
That
Yeah.
comes with experience
Yes.
and wisdom and a little bit of financial security, probably, where you can say, no, that's not going to be the right kind of client for me. I don't want to deal with that for
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
If somebody had that right from the beginning, I want to meet them.
Yeah.
I didn't have that.
No, I did not have that.
In the early days, I think, you're figuring it all out. I remember one of my earliest big moments like that. I fired a client that was just getting ready to launch. Everything was getting ready to go. Was going to be training 300 of their engineers, and their whole topic was trust. And we've got to create more trust in our environment. And then it came to just getting all the details and logistics and specifics around the training. And we'd gone through everything and what it would be. And then it was like, well, what are you going to say when you first start? And then what are you going to say? And then what are you going to do? And then, well, how about that? What are you going to say?
You're like,
I'm
come on, man.
brother,
Come
if
on.
there's a trust problem, it's showing up right here. I am not your call.
Yeah.
If you can't trust me to fulfill my role and responsibility in delivering this, we're not. And everyone to this day is like, you fired who?
But you have to say congruent with your brand. I mean,
100%.
you're not being yourself.
Yeah.
Or
It's
you're
good,
authentic.
good to fire clients.
You know
Uh,
what?
to
It
no
was
to certain
it was
types
a
of
big one
business.
too. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? That is not who I want to engage in. I'm going to be miserable.
Yeah.
And life's too short for that.
Yeah,
There's
that's
other
so
better
true.
clients that are more aligned.
Bad groups and bad contracts are not good.
What are the main problems that the clients that you're talking to or prospects that you're talking to are dealing with right now? Is it different now than 5 years ago, 10
I
years
don't
ago?
know that it's different. I think retaining great employees is tough. I think finding great employees is tough. I think we've got that generational thing where, people are bitching and moaning about the younger generation. It's like this happens every generation. This is nothing new.
People also don't go work at one place for 40 years
It's
anymore.
just different. And so if we're not able to adapt, so I think adaptability is big. Communication is always at the crux of it. Getting people to just be able to give and receive feedback and be honest and collaborate and figure out, how do I fulfill my role and responsibility while simultaneously helping you fulfill yours? How do we do this collaboratively? And how do we create alignment in our organization that really moves the needle, as opposed to siloed thinking, or my job is more important than the overall organization's goals? We'll see those.
Do you have an NLP background or no? Neurolinguistics?
No,
What
I
kind
didn't
of-
know about it yet.
Yeah. So what kind of tools do you use? We use DISC a lot, or Drake. Some of the I use Maxwell stuff. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team I've used before. You have any tools that you really like that are maybe not yours? Any of those that you run
I
alongside?
don't really incorporate a ton of outside tools. Real Colors is one that I
Yeah,
use.
of course.
That one I like only because I'm not a huge assessment person. The only reason I really love that is because there's a lot of other training that I can build in with it
Yep.
and around it. So I think it's a great framework. It's easy and it's very fun.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's really all of our own proprietary
Yeah.
stuff from our 2.5-day classes. Most of what I do, I custom create for the
Yeah.
clients. So
Smart.
one of my training partners and I.
Yeah, that's 5 Dysfunctions came my way from the company that I knew the CFO. He goes, Mike, you're not going to bet this guy's bought in on 5 Dysfunctions.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I've used it, but it'll wrap nicely around the stuff I teach. So I'm not opposed to that. That's why I was curious as a fellow
no, and
content
there's
creator.
that's the thing. It's like, again, what speaks to you? If there's certain tools that a trainer or coach or speaker, great. If that's what works for you in that modality or that.
Yeah.
There's a million things. No one has recreated the wheel. Can we continually enhance it or change it or make it different and unique, or connect with a person in a new way? Sure.
Yeah.
What I don't love is when it becomes, well, that's not my job, or
I
I
agree.
can't do that, or, well,
It's not my style.
he's a this or she's a that.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like,
I am who I am. I'm like, that's against the adaptability. If you say I am who I am, then you're not
And a
getting into
lot of
adaptability.
these companies will say that, like, you are who you are. And, if you take this assessment in 15 years, you're going to be exactly the same. You are, you can't change. This is you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
everything I believe is about you can always change.
Yep.
You can always improve. It's about a choice and decision.
Yep.
So that's where I'm always at odds with that philosophy.
Yeah, I
So,
agree.
Yeah.
What about, real quick, outside of work? What other projects are you doing outside of your passion?
My biggest passion is travel. So anytime I can get away with my kids or significant other, when we can just do that kind of stuff, that's my happy place. So
Yeah.
love to travel. Yeah, but in terms of projects, just doing more of what I do and creating new ways of approaching different people in different ways.
Any new books coming out or any new content?
No, I launched my book a couple years ago, and
What's the
that's
name?
been
Just
From Me to You,
From Me to You.
always with the you,
Yeah.
which people are like, why the you, why the you? So that's just a big
Yeah.
anchor for me because
I know it.
when I started my company, it was always like, it's about you. If it's about me, we're done. It's
Love it.
got to always be about you. So I use that as my little anchor. But so From Me to You was my book that I launched a couple years ago. And it's really leadership lessons that I've learned throughout my life, personal stories attached to the leadership lesson within them and helping the reader connect with that.
Good.
Yeah.
Have you found that your motivation for growing your business has increased since your kids went off to school, or has it shifted? I'm asking this because I'm about to go through that.
Yes, you're like, I'm
empty
right
nest
there.
thing.
You get to be a coach right now.
One that's about to fly out of the coop, and then I'm a couple years away from the other one. And one of the things I've been thinking about is when I have nobody in my house and it's just me.
Yeah.
Am I going to work more? Am I going to be more motivated to do more stuff? Or am I going to be like, nah, it's it. I'm done. I did it already.
It's different. I don't think it's an increased motivation. I've kind of always been highly motivated, so I don't think it's changed. I think it's just different. My motivations are building in more downtime, which sounds kind of crazy, being really efficient with my time, making sure that I'm I'd rather work with fewer clients that I absolutely adore than spreading myself too thin. So I think it's just shifted in that way, making myself available for the things that also matter outside of work. My work is my absolute passion. I really, truly love it. It gets me up early. It keeps me up late. And I also want to make sure that I'm doing the other things in my life that I love.
So it's not so much about just like, I did 10 million last year. I need to do 15 and then I need to do 20. That stuff that part of the growth has changed a little bit for you?
Not as much. It's always about growing because I find that exciting. And whether that's growing personally, growing financially, all of that's exciting to me. I'm in my early 50s, almost early mid 50s. And when I look at the calendar and it's like there's less sand in the top of the hourglass than the bottom, and so I'm really deliberate with my time now. Whereas before I don't know, I think there was so much survival mode in the early days, 20 years ago is different than today, but now I'm very intentional. Very
It resonates
intentional.
with me.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think
how
I'm
gonna
doing
be.
more of that.
I'm behind him by a couple. Colt's a freshman, so I got 4 more years. But I do think about that. Well, of course, you always think about, we've been married 20 years. I'm proud of that. But we always talk about that. What's our life going to look like after that? Are you going to travel?
Yeah.
She's a judge, so she's not exactly, an entrepreneur type where she can just pick up and leave. And she loves what she does. She'll probably be on the bench as long as she loves being on the bench. She could be until she's 75.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is put you on the coaching seat.
Okay.
So tomorrow I have it's a 6-hour facilitation. It's an offsite here in town. A bunch of entrepreneurs are coming in from out of town, like a YEO, YPO type of group. My buddy's the chapter. I'm in charge this month.
Okay.
And he sends me this themes that they really want to hit in this word. And I've been hearing this word come up more. I'm curious if you've heard this word as well. Enoughness. It's right there in the script. We want to know more about how this is, which ties into really when is enough? Is it balance? What's your number? When should I retire? Should I want to really go out and sell? But if you had to be the coach tomorrow and you had 1 or 2 themes that you'd want to do to talk about enoughness for 7 or 8 people, what would you tell them?
I'd want to know how they define enoughness individually.
Yeah.
My enoughness might be different than yours. I'm sure it is. I'd want to understand how they define it as a group.
Yeah.
And then individually understand, well, what does that look like for you? Because I've got people close to me that are going to plow and drive because they are so invigorated by the hunt and the thrill and the build, not just this, but just what they get to build. They lights them up. So that enoughness is different than the person who's like, you know what, I've worked hard, I've built this, and now I want to enjoy it, or I want to watch others run it while I go do Y, or I want to build something new and shift gears or follow a passion I've never done. To me, I'd want to understand what enoughness was for each of them, because I think it's too big of a concept to
Have you heard this term a lot? I haven't heard this.
I haven't heard
Not
it
till
much,
recently.
no.
I've never heard the phrase.
It's come up twice in the last, or 3 times. This is the
That's
third time in the last
interesting.
90 days. I don't know who's out. Someone on Instagram is probably promoting it.
It's probably like a little Barbie takeoff, with Ken and Knuff and that whole thing. It's probably come from that. Everything good comes from Barbie.
I'm gonna bring that up
Some good
tomorrow. I'm
movie.
gonna bring,
Is this
I'm
a
gonna
Ken and Barbie
I'm gonna show a
reference?
clip at the beginning of my training.
hated
Does this guy resonate with you?
Yeah.
No, but I, of course, naturally, this is a coach. You ask yourself the first question,
Yeah.
like, well, what about me? Well,
Yeah.
what's enough for
What
me?
is
it,
enough
is
for
it the
me?
money? Is it college funds? Oh, I've had a guy tell me last week, it was like, Mike, I just want to get my kids through college,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're on their own. It's not when they're 18 and they're on their own. It's when they're all
When
through
they're done with
college.
school.
I paid for that and want to have debt, and then whatever happens,
Yeah.
that's enough. And I'm like, okay, we'll see in 5 years, because I know this is an entrepreneur-minded person who, like you, he wants to go out there and impact the world. You don't just change.
Yeah, I can't imagine just hanging it up. Like the money's there, so I'm done.
But you
like,
travel though. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, traveling's great, but I still would want to do what I do. Like
Yeah.
I still want to be. I'd still want to.
You
be
can do what you
speaking.
do from anywhere, though, can you not?
True. Yes, I certainly in
So
person.
you could go live in Italy for 3 months and then go live here for 3
Absolutely.
months. and-
Absolutely.
right?
yeah.
Where's the favorite place you've been, travel-wise?
I went to the North Pole. I went to the Arctic
wow.
Circle,
Whoa.
and that was
Damn. Bucket list right there.
amazing.
Not the answer
amazing.
that I was expecting.
When did you do
It
that?
was my 50th birthday gift from my brother.
Wow.
And it was one of the most epic experiences of my life.
So what'd you get out of it? What was the things that you took away?
How vast this planet is, how little we are, how insignificant all the BS is, all of that, and learning more about polar bears and polar ice caps and what's happening to our planet and how if we keep doing what we're doing, it's that was just a gut punch. So a lot of that and seeing it firsthand. It was.
What is the process like to get there?
I flew to Paris. My brother lives in Paris. I flew to Paris. Then we went up to the very, very northern islands of Norway.
Wow.
And then you take a ship from there.
How long's
which
that
is
ride?
Crazy.
It's like off the map.
Yeah,
That
it
is
was, it was several hours. Yeah, it was a ways I can't even remember now. But
Boat?
Yeah, boat.
We're
It
talking
was
about like a kind of
it's a
like
French cruise line, and that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's a ship. Like,
Not a massive. Don't
I
think
never
like
knew that.
Royal
I feel
Caribbean,
motion
nothing
sick
like that.
already just thinking about it.
you don't like that? You don't like
No.
being on boats anyway.
No.
He's not a cruise guy.
Yeah, I'm not a cruise girl, and neither is my brother. So don't think like
That's
saying like a
how
road
it
trip.
through,
It's
though.
my-
You wanted to point B. You had to
Yeah.
get there that way.
No, it's very beautiful. It's like a luxury
Yeah.
yachty type experience. Not yacht, but
I know what you
very yeah. And it was epic. It was just
Wow.
amazing. So that
I
was the
would
best
think it's
50th birthday gift
That's like
I
the
made.
50th gift.
I've got a wonderful.
So you said I always do things in zeros and five. I'm 53.
Okay,
So I
I'm
got
53.
50. Yeah, 55 will be my next one when it's a benchmark.
Yep.
So what do you give yourself at 55 if it's going to be a
Oh.
travel gift?
I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. I'm too in the moment. I'm still looking. I'm staring down 54
We don't
first.
want
I
to.
haven't
We don't
gotten
want
that
to
far.
count ahead, right? We want to slowly roll.
Sometimes I'm like, wait, how old am I? Because sometimes I'm like, I'm 54. I'm like, no, I'm not 53. How old am I? So I get myself confused.
So I got to ask you about because you mentioned off camera. So the girls are at ASU.
They are.
How often do you see them? How often do you talk to them? How's that changed from being a mother to a friend? And I know a lot of people have beliefs about this, and
Yeah.
you always got to remain this or that. And I don't stand on this. I know how
Yeah.
my dad treated me, and I'm going to model a lot of that. But what's your take on that now
Yeah.
that they're in college?
So they're in college, but they are and aren't. So my oldest daughter was studying abroad this last semester. And so her first year she was in the dorm. Next year she was in an apartment. Then she studied abroad, and then she moved back home for the rest of this year, her junior year. It's been fabulous having her home as a young adult. 21, she's remarkable, and so that's been super fun. My youngest daughter's a freshman finishing up the dorm thing. And she's been spending more time at home recently because she's getting ready to move out of the dorm. And there's a lot of dorm problems at this dorm at ASU. So she's sort of over the hot, steamy dorm situation, but she'll be in an apartment next year. The three of us, we're sort of like the Three Musketeers. Though. It's always been just us. So
Yeah.
we're really, really close,
Yep.
which is awesome. So
Yeah,
it's been
I've seen your
it's been
posts.
fun.
Yeah, I see some of it. And what's your take on
Yeah.
that with social media and your family and what you share?
Completely shifted. In the beginning, I was like, oh, this isn't when at first. I posted everything because I thought it was so much fun seeing everyone's life. And then I'm like, why am I doing this? Why are we posting? It's like, I don't understand. So, somebody graduated or it's some big event. Other than that, it's only just business.
So it's
work
not.
stuff.
It is business stuff.
Yeah.
So you use it a lot for
I
business.
do because
Yeah.
a lot of our stuff is really visual and it's
Yeah.
so much fun to kind of see and share imagery from some of our big events. But other than that, I don't do a whole lot on
No?
there anymore.
But
No.
people want to see that other part of you. Don't
I do a little bit, but I just it's not like, hey, I went here this weekend or there that week. Oh.
What about like strategic posting? Like if you say, that's one thing to go on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm grateful to be in front of XYZ company because you have good
Yes.
social proof.
Yeah.
Totally get that. But if you said, hey, this is going to be an informational piece and I'm going to have me talking to the camera for 2 minutes, talking about goal setting to Instagram. Is that something you're like?
I do really short little snippets, and it's typically something that just came up in my mind as I'm driving, or I just got done with a training. It's something that just stuck with me. I'm like, that's a good little lesson or point or something that people could find value in. Yeah, I'll just literally talk into my phone and do it. There's not a whole lot of
afterthought.
Yeah, it's just sort of an in the moment type thing. So I do,
that's we get frustrated because we'll put a ton of afterthought into something.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when we first did our first true LinkedIn post announcing it, he's got like 100,000, 20 plus on LinkedIn. He's got a huge following.
Yeah.
And I've got guys that were helping me post, kind of giving us solids to reshare it.
Yeah.
And we're kind of looking at the numbers going, that is paltry. Like, what is that? But we know now, we know the algorithm. They don't want you promoting. They want you bringing value. We all get on. We do that in advance.
Yes.
But there's certain posts that are just completely random. Like you had one recently. I love the one you talked about feminism, by the way. Was that a little edgy?
I thought that one might take off.
It was authentic
because
though.
it was
authentic. It's edgy enough that you have to go see it. I'd love to get your take on it.
I want to hear it.
To hear a guy talk about that.
But it didn't. And then you have another one and you're talking about something that's like boring, like, I don't know, how to make a cold call. And
and you're like, really? That's the thing that takes off?
It's impossible to try to figure out what's going to work or not.
Yeah, there is no rhyme or reason.
But I've always like asking that question of entrepreneurs, social media, like how it plays into your life or not.
Yeah.
And with are your daughters on it?
They are. Also, but not like super here and there. They're very mindful of what they post, and it tends to be more aesthetic than anything else.
Sure.
You know, it's like the cool, vibey pictures and the kinds of things that less of like, look at me.
But they had a good teacher.
Oh, wow.
When they're speed of leader, speed of pack, right? So tell us, we always close out with a couple of little asks, like what's your favorite book all time?
A book I really like, and this is not a leadership book, but just a book I really like, is Chasing Daylight. I
haven't heard that one come up in a while. No one said that one on the podcast yet.
That one's a favorite. And I think it's probably this phase of life that I'm in where it's like, time is precious. So that's one that I love. Yeah, and there's a million leadership books I could
give me one.
Go on.
Give me one.
Of course, you put me on the spot, and I can't think of a dang book.
Like mine's Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. That's my number one. That is my number one.
Is right up there. I have a list, and I'm just blanking
Tony
on
Robbins,
everything
of course,
I love.
making the giant within.
Tony Robbins. There's lots of Les Brown. There's lots
Les
of
Brown. You got to go with Les.
Yeah.
He's still alive and kicking, man.
He is.
Principles to live by. Anything, like you get to talk to the audience, say, this is one of my big values, something I live by. It doesn't have to be a quote.
Yeah.
It could be something from your teachings.
There are a couple quotes. Leap in the net will appear is a big one for me, because I do feel that, coupled with risking nothing is risking everything, because I do feel like those both really embody not just my journey, but I think so many people I meet, leaders I meet, individuals I meet, play safe because it's comfortable. And so
where'd you read that one from? I think it was Morning Notes. Julia,
decades ago.
Yeah, she wrote
I literally
that.
had a quote in my first
quote.
office, and I would always look at it. I'm like,
But I always tell people, first you have to jump.
Yeah.
I think of about a half dozen people I want to send that quote to right now.
Yeah.
But everyone's always standing on the edge.
Push them. Risking nothing is risking
That's
everything.
what the coach does. Just push them. The net will appear. It'll appear.
Get out there.
Good. Anything else you're promoting? Talk about website. Where do we find you?
You and Improved with the U. YouandImproved.com. That's a company website. We do our 2.5-day immersive leadership classes throughout the year, which are open to the public as opposed to our private, corporate training. And in August, we have our adult class, but once a year we do a class for teenagers. So 14 to 18 years old. I actually started a foundation 12 years ago that provides scholarships for deserving teens that couldn't afford to go otherwise. So it is a game changer.
Cool.
So those are big. It's coming up the weekend of August 7th through 9th.
We'll make sure we promote that for sure. Well, Jodi, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you. So great seeing you both. Great seeing you.
I know, when to reconvene after 10 years.
I know, right?
Let's not make this 10 more.
No, not 10 more.
And we'll have to bring you back on.
Come back. It'll be so much fun. Great.
Scott Leese, Mike Lindstrom, Jodi Low. Thanks for another episode. Tune in next time. Hey, everyone. Mike Lindstrom here. Thanks for tuning in to What's Your Story with Mike and Scott. Make sure to hit the subscribe button for new episodes every Tuesday morning and check out a few of our previous episodes below. We'll see you next time.